I'm Jackie Ray, multimedia journalist for the Long Beach Post. Several months ago, I wrote an article regarding Terri Henry, a prominent figure in the Long Beach food scene, using the N-word on multiple occasions. At the time, she didn't feel it was necessary to issue a public apology because she was simply repeating what another Black woman said. So I gathered leaders from the Black community and I wanted to sit down and have a conversation about why we as Black people continue to use a word that is dripping with hate and is always used to demean us. I have to be honest, I was a little timid about releasing this podcast because it's so far after the initial events. But as fate would have it, here we are again. Brian Addison, also a prominent member in the Long Beach food scene, reignited the N-word conversation when he decided to call out Terri Henry for selling Long Beach Black Restaurant Week. In doing so, we saw the first public apology from Terri Henry, but that did not stop Brian Addison from sending me a text, which he had a picture of Terri Henry and created a bubble where he used the N-word. What's the difference between Brian Addison using the N-word as a joke and Terri Henry using it because she was repeating it from someone else? If you ask me, nothing. But it is troubling to once again be in a position where two white people were not only publicly arguing over Black Restaurant Week, but also use the N-word and both presenting themselves as allies. So again, I had to ask the question, why do we as Black people still use the N-word? So I invite you to join me as leaders of the Black community, including Wes Porter, Sinai Kinfe, and Honey Blue. We discuss the use of the N-word and try to figure out ways that we as a community can move forward for positive change. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the very first episode of The Conversation. The Conversation is brought to you by loyal members of the Long Beach Post. For award-winning journalism, investigative reports, and videos, be a part of it. Join today at lbpost.com/join. I'm Jackie Ray, and welcome to the first episode of The Conversation. This is a podcast specifically designed to have hard conversations, but needed conversations, especially when we talk about change within the community. So we're going to tackle a tough one today, but I have some great guests that are going to help me break this down, something that is very prevalent in the Black community, and that is the use of the N-word. So joining me today is Ari Edmondson, aka Honey Blue. And you want to tell us about your organizations?
Yes, peace and many blessings, everybody. My name is Honey Blue, Ari, whatever you want to call me. I am a part of New Era Long Beach, a Black Power Race First organization, one of many chapters across the nation, as well as the April Parker Foundation. So I'm happy to be here.
I'm very happy to have you. You guys know Sinai Kinfe. I got to shout out Sinai. He was on a podcast not too long ago. He's also my savior for this podcast because we had a last minute cancellation. But Sinai's like, don't worry about it. I got you. So Sinai, tell him who you with.
My name is Sinai Kinfe. I'm a member of the Six, which is a community-based organization in the central area of Long Beach. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And then last but not least, Wes Porter. And your organizations are?
Hey, so Urban Society Long Beach. So we specialize in entertainment, really geared towards the young Black professional. So DJ services, and we host the event in downtown Long Beach called RM Brunch.
That was the first event I went to in Long Beach.
Okay.
And I had a good time.
Good.
Even with the church fans.
Good.
I had a good time.
Yeah. That's good to know. We got more church fans, by the way.
Oh, man, I kept that church fan, so I can't wait to get some more. So thank you guys so much for joining us. This podcast was sparked because of the use of the N-word. There's a woman, Terri Henry, in the community. She runs Black Restaurant Week. On several occasions to myself and others in that organization, she used the N-word. So she originally used it with the ER and then said that was a slip up. She meant to use it with the A, the slang term is what she said. So I know I sent that article to all of you guys. When you first read it and you first see that this is a woman that has positioned herself to really help specifically Black restaurant owners, a lot of pop-ups that are struggling to find like that brick and mortar and really get their business going. And she's positioned herself as an ally. And then you read that she not only said this, but feels like she doesn't have to apologize for it because a Black woman said it first. What's your immediate reaction to that? Wes, I'm going to start with you.
So just a little bit about, I'm from Tennessee. So
Okay.
my stance may be a little different than most in California, I would say maybe. For me, white person should never say this word. If you're not black, you should not be saying this word.
Is that
Period.
in any
In
capacity?
any
R or
capacity at
A?
all.
Okay.
RAER, whatever. You shouldn't be saying the word. That's just my personal stance on that. After reading your article, I was actually surprised that she tried to say, "Well, I heard these people say it, so I feel like I can say it now." It's not acceptable for me, especially if you're positioning yourself as an ally, wanting to help black business in this city. It's not cool. It's not good.
For me, I think that, and I really love that Wes just referenced the regional disconnect within the black community as a whole, because we're not monolithic. For me, I think that our culture isn't really gatekept. And so, because anyone feels like they can have access to our culture and consume our culture is just general American culture rather than ethnic specific culture. And that mindset is just, it's not even just outdated. It's not even modern either. And I think that it's always going to be to the detriment of black people that we don't really have cultural boundaries. And so everyone feels comfortable in playing these characters, which are just, minstrel esque. And I think that some people forget that the camera is always rolling. And so, when you make these assumptions about your familiarity with a culture that's not yours, oftentimes you get quickly reminded about what reality is, which I think your article very well articulated.
Ari, what about you?
Yeah. Saying similar ideology in regards to no white person ever should be saying the word. I believe that based on the article as well, it doesn't matter who or what the context was, if somebody repeated the word, etc. It just shouldn't be used regardless. I also believe that if you're somebody that's specifically an ally or that's what you're claiming yourself to be, how are you not cognizant of what this word could be or how it could be viewed towards somebody that is black if you're trying to speak for black people or be a representative or ally. So, I think it's important that whoever is trying to speak for our people understands the history of our people, especially if you're white. You should know that you shouldn't be using that word. It really isn't rocket science, but that's kind of my take on that for sure.
I like we got the formalities out. Now let's just get into the nitty gritty and have a real black conversation, because the reality of it is like I have since trained myself. I'm from Denver, Colorado. So at one point, Denver had one of, I think, the top 4 racist police departments in the country, and I worked for them. So it's a different kind of thing and I went to a predominantly white school. So for me, the word is infuriating when white people use it. Now, I'm not going to say that I haven't used it myself. I grew up on Tupac, you know what I'm saying? And I sing every lyric word for word. So I'm not going to say that I haven't used the word. There is a very, if it was just us sitting around, talking and we use it with reckless abandon, to be honest, I wouldn't hear it. It only resonates with me when all of a sudden there's white people in the room, because I know how appropriation works. And I know that the entitlement says, well, you said it, why can't I say it? So I have trained myself not to use it because I don't want to be in situations where I'm comfortable with you guys, you know what I mean? So yeah, it could be part of my vocabulary, but I don't want the white person behind me to use that as an excuse. That's also my position when anyone who's not black uses it. You don't say words that aren't in your vocabulary. That's not a thing. It's nothing flies out of your mouth that you haven't said before. Let's just be real about that. But I've heard this excuse time and time again, not just from Terri Henry, but from journalists on television. I've gone to karaoke places and I've had to check people like, you can't sing that, not like that. And it was like, well, it's in the song, it's a lyric. So, and it's always because since we do it, which I think if we really want to talk about the historical context of that, everything we've ever done has been taken from us. So how do we explain why we use a word that they used against us in a very hateful manner to try to demean us? How do we then say, well, now we made it a slang and it's okay for us to use? How did we get there?
I mean, that's a really good question. Just growing up where I grew, it was common to hear people, us amongst us, right? What's up, whatever. I don't want to say it on this podcast, and I don't want to give anyone else the okay to use the word because they heard me say it, right? So, but that's a really good question, right? So, I think we've taken something that was so negative and have turned it to a positive amongst ourselves, right? I've had a situation recently where a black person used the word towards me, but it was in a very negative way. So I had to check that person as well, right? So I don't know if I have an answer for your question, other than I think we've taken something negative and turned it to a positive.
Yeah, I talked to my dad about this before he passed, and he was like, it just he had a very similar sentiment to what you had. He's like, when I was a kid, we called each other brother, 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 brother. He said, and then all of a sudden, white folks started calling each other bro, and then we kind of navigated to the N word. And I was like, that's not a logical leap for me.
Right.
but he's like, there's this desire, and I think some of it for me, and Ari, I want to get your thoughts on this. For me, I think we're constantly robbed of our culture. So I think when you really look at slang in the black community, as soon as white folks get it, we got a whole nother word. And I think I could be wrong, but I feel like that's how it evolved. Ari, what do you think?
Yeah, I definitely appreciate you bringing up the fact that, there was once a time, and even still, we call each other brother and sister. Like I just said, you two, what's up, brother? How you doing? Like that's just kind of how I talk to people within my community. You know what I mean? And that's something I have to also reprogram myself to do as well. Similar thing. I grew up. My dad is an MC. You know what I'm saying? He's very lyrical, and with that, he would say the word as well at times, but because I understood also my major in school was Africana studies, and being a community organizer, I had to realize that people are looking at me a certain way. So I have to be a representative of my people in the most positive asset. And so, with that, I believe it's important to continue to call each other brother and sister, because that also creates the connection between us as a people, that we're not separate from each other, no matter what type of, African person you are or wherever you come from in the diaspora. I believe that, calling each other by brother and sister creates a kind of connectivity between us that also uplifts what we used to call each other. Context also does matter, right? And so we can say, depending on how we're talking, what kind of conversation we're having, the word may slip up or what have you, but accountability is important. New Era Long Beach, one of our pillars is self-accountability. It's the first pillar in our organization. And so I don't believe I don't believe it's okay for me to say, okay, just because I said the N word, that's like giving other people a pass or what have you. I have to have self accountability, because at the end of the day, I can control my words. Nobody else can control what I say. And just because I say something doesn't give another person a pass, especially a whole adult. Like, you're a grown person. Right. You can't say, just because I said it, now I can say it. You have your own, ideology, and you have accountability as well. So I think it starts with self accountability and reprogramming your language.
If we can go back to something that Sanaya said in the intro about no gatekeepers of our culture, right? So it's in the music, right? Oh, because I heard Future say it, I can say it, right? So I think we to the self accountability part, we have to bring that back to us and regain control of our culture, right? And not make it so accessible to everybody else.
So I remember a time, not to date myself, but I remember a time when there was no crossover in music. Like, if you was hot on the R&B charts, you was hot on the R&B charts. And we loved that. And then we had all kinds of names for people who all of a sudden crossed over, you know what I mean? And then I'm not going to say that it was positive, but I'm just saying we had names for people who crossed over. Like, why do you want to cross over? You selling out. It's all about the money. Because at that time, and my brother's 11 years older than me, so his favorite group at the time was like X Clan. That's like my whole thing, because that's like conscious rap. It's about teaching us about our culture. And I think that's not going to cross over.
It's not intended to.
Right. Exactly. And when you have that kind of music that is intended to empower and teach you about your culture, there's no crossover in that. But what's also troubling is that when you have people calling each other the N word, demeaning Black women, talking about killing each other, oh yeah, we'll take that all day. What does that say? So now I want to ask you that. What does that say about our country, specifically about what they will allow to cross over?
When you say what they will allow, who are you
Mainstream
referencing?
white folks.
Okay, sure. So, in reference to what Ari was saying about the accountability, we as a market, because this is a market-based culture in society, we as a market very much for the last 100 years were self-sustained because of segregation, economically, socially speaking, and so a group like X Clan, for example, which is from East New York, literally 60% below the poverty line. They were speaking to the reclaiming of consciousness because of the environment that they come from, and that was needed. And that's why that group, which I'm a big fan of X-Clan and Brother Jay and everyone, but like they weren't intentionally trying to be mainstream artists, but they were able to sustain their lifestyle touring black-owned spaces and going on HBCU tours and stuff like that. That doesn't exist anymore. And so I think what we're really referencing is the balance. Like there's a lack of balance in the equation. Whereas, yeah, there's stuff that is, I don't want to make it like low vibrational play, high vibrational, but like, there's things that it's just intended to engage with our base nature, sex, violence, etc. And then there's frequencies that go above that. Even 20 years ago, you were able to see a balance of, that touches all those things. You don't see that anymore. And so because of that, what you do see is this obsession with Black dysfunction. And I think that Black dysfunction is a commodity, and it's a commodity that's being traded in the open market, the mainstream dominant culture market. And the consciousness of us is not as easy for them to monetize. And so you don't see energy being poured into it. I mean, like you can look towards like the late 90s, the whole conscious neo soul resurgence, like that was completely corporate America creating that. Like there was no, like all those artists, Maxwell, Erykah Badu, D'Angelo, they were all on mainstream labels, on mainstream television, putting out mainstream music. And we now like nostalgically reference it, but it made sense at that moment for the market to pour energy into it. The minute that it didn't, they stopped doing it. And to be honest, accountability wise, we stopped supporting it. We went into the Jiggy era and the bling era and left behind the nostalgic, let's go back to the 70s, the Black righteousness era. And so I think that to what Wes, I appreciate you for referencing the gatekeeping, like until we acknowledge that, how would they know these things about us if we didn't show it to them? I don't expect, I don't expect my oppressor to show me mercy, and if we're referencing that we're engaging in this warfare, then why weaponize and arm the people that are going to hurt us, and then cry victim.
I was at the Pan-African Film Festival and I had a chance to meet Big Les, and so I capitalized on the opportunity to talk to her about this. I said, you come from a time when, you're the dancer on Living Single, which Friend stole, by the way. I'm not gonna let that slide. Friend stole that whole concept. But that was all about, showing Black women specifically supporting each other, rising up. Then you got Black love, and then you had the dysfunction between Maxine and all that, but she was still a lawyer. She was a powerhouse, and it was all about us, rising together. And then you had the music, Queen Latifah. My favorite song from her is like, "Who you calling it?" That's my favorite song from her. If you don't know, you don't know, but I'll probably figure out a way to get it into you. But it was all about having respect for each other. And I asked her, I said, why do you think, since you are such a part of that era, you're ingrained in that era, why do you think that it's not like that anymore? And she gave a long response, but at the end of the day, she was like, because that doesn't make money. And these artists right now are about making money. And that resonated with me. I get it because we live in a capitalistic society. But at the end of the day, when you're talking about true capitalism, we are the first ones left out of that narrative. So I wonder why we can't say to ourselves, you getting money as an individual is not a legacy. You empowering people who look like you to get money together is a legacy. How have we lost that message, and how can we get that back? Ari, I see
I'm
you,
like,
girl.
man, I want to speak on that really because I'm an artist, right? And so I make conscious music, and it's not even like I'm intentionally like I'm making conscious music. This is just who I am, and so there's not one song that I have out that has the N word in it, and that's intentionally. Like I say brother, I say sister in my music, and I'm an independent artist, right? I don't plan on ever signing to a major label. My second project I just put out, Master the Ceremony, made over 2K sales like first week on Bandcamp. You know what I mean? So I believe that it really is about your mentality, right? We're talking about X-Clan, we're talking about conscious rap, and it's what do you believe, right? If you feed into the fact that we know major labels are not going to cater to our success and our consciousness, but if you don't believe in yourself and how far you can go, you've already given the power to the oppressor because you don't even believe that you can get as far as you did. We can take a look at Queen Latifah and really the native tongues in general, right? Like we can take a look at how far they were able to go in their career back in the 90s and see that as a pillar of some type of success, which is why so many people were influenced by them. after the fact. So to say that there's no success in conscious rap, or not even just conscious rap, there's no success in empowerment of our people is a lie, because people are asking for that right now. You know, and we understand based on this conversation that no major label that does have a lot of money is going to push that. But why are we continuously looking to oppressors and major labels to push us? Do you not believe that you're able to do it on your own or with a team of people that can actually get you there, that don't believe in, you know, giving up your power? So I just believe it depends on what do you want as an artist. And I, you know, as me speaking for myself, I don't ever plan on signing to a major label, and I know I'm going to be successful because people have responded positively to my music. So it's just on what do you believe as an African and Black person. Like, that's up to you.
I think to her point too, so she's the creative, right? And then there's the nucleus around her, like the community that's around her. There needs to be consequences. There used to be consequences. You know, you would have gangster rap artists, you know, late 80s, early 90s. They would do shows and they would have a KRS-One on the same lineup. They would have a Public Enemy on the same lineup. That was in consequence to the fact that there was black venues and black bookers. Where it's like, look, I have 30 artists, so you're gonna have to, if you want these 3 artists that are of this moment of time with the gangster rap thing, you're also gonna have to put her on the lineup, or else the consequence is we're gonna take these artists off of your tour. So the market had to adjust and respond to that. I think as a community, there is no consequences for doing wrong to us, both externally and internally. Like if she had an interaction with a venue and they said we're going to pay you this, and then she comes and they pay her that, the rest of us as a community, we're going to keep going to that venue regardless of her experience. And that's what I mean when to answer your question about, you know, how do we fix and repair. It's like there has to be consequences for wronging one another, because once people feel like, oh, if I do this to you, I might get in trouble, or I might, you know, there might be something bad happen to my experience in business or whatever, they're going to adjust themselves. Like people self-police. I just want to say this. People self-police not because of altruism, not because of their moral standards, but because of afraid of being punished.
It's interesting that you said that, because after I wrote that article, I got a ton of calls. I'm not going to name names, but I got a ton of calls from people that said, hey, do you mind if I still work with Terri? Do you mind if I, and that I was like, look, do what you do. Because the fact that you're even calling me about this just proves my point that at the end of the day, people don't care what happens to Black people. And it's hard for me to change from that narrative.
So for that situation there none of us should work with this woman ever again. So I don't, when folks use that word, I don't really care about their apology, right? Because that's who you are, right? That's ingrained in your soul. Use the word whichever way you did it, right? You did it. You made that decision. We're all adults, right? We chose to say that. Now you have to deal with the consequences of that, right? We're not supporting this week again. We'll make our own, right? We'll put it together. We'll do our own. We don't need your help anymore. Thank you, but move on. So the fact that someone even that would call and ask, that means it's on their soul. They know what they need to do. They just need somebody to give them the okay to do it.
They need to give them the okay. I told, again, I'm not naming any names, but the person who called me, I was like, I would never, if this person said something offensive about your culture, I wouldn't call you and say, hey, can I still work with them? I would judge that person by their character and realize that is not a characteristic that I can align myself with. I don't need your permission to see what's right and wrong. And that, though, all of those calls, and I got more than 4. So the first 4 were troubling because these are people that I've worked with and that know me. And I was a little like, have I misrepresented myself to you in some way that you think that I'm going to answer this question in a way that makes you feel comfortable? That was my first question to them. It was like, oh, no. But you know, it's important for us in this way. Then do what you do. Why are you calling me? You've already made your decision. And in that, you've made your decision about how you feel about us. And I think that sometimes that is the hard pill to swallow, because, you know, I tell people all the time, like we've been having anti-Black narratives for a long time. We've never gotten an anti-Black bill. You know, one thing happens to one community one time, we got a whole bill. And it becomes a very hard pill to swallow. And then when I hear people say, well, you guys use this word in your community, I should be able to use it. What does that say about that individual who is white or who's not Black who wants to use it? What do you think that says about them on an individual level?
I mean, that they moving at a low vibration. That's it. I mean, it tells you it tells you everything you need to know about that person. If they're even asking you or saying, "Oh, you said it, so I can say it." No, you don't have any self control over yourself. You don't have any self control, right? The fact that you even want to, they just think you can ask me that question and think I'm just going to give you the okay for that. That's problematic on its own. So
Referencing the calls, I think that a lot of people have low racial self-esteem. There's many things I should say that I will not do. This off top, it's unconditional. I will never do these things in order to support anything. I don't care how much amount of money you throw in my face. I will never do it. And I think that your article, and I mean, it references some of these people that you're being very polite about.
I am.
It's
I promise. When the cameras go out, we have real conversation.
Of course. But I mean, it's like some people are like, well, I gotta eat. It's like, well, I gotta die too. Like, there's a lot of things that it's just a part of the human existence. It doesn't mean that I'm gonna degrade my culture or my community just because I need to get what $10 a plate or $20 a plate, so whatever. But in terms of like these people as individuals, and I'm not saying this to like provide cover, or I'm just this is context wise. It is so normal. It's just so normal to be anti-black that a lot of people I don't think they genuinely recognize like, oh, like I have a internalized hatred of you. And so when you're like, hey, you know that like that bothers me, right? Like what you're displaying to me can easily be defined as hate. They're like, really? No. And then they'll list friends, maybe past relationships or current relationships, a love or affection for a celebrity as like the defense of why they're not full of hate. But I mean, a lot of people participate in the anti-black narrative, and it's unconscious, or it's subconscious, I should say. And I think that just goes to show. I mean, like even right now, like this reparation conversation going on, and they finally put out a number, right? And I want to say this is the first time in recent years where I've seen both conservatives and progressive people in alignment with like, this is outrageous,
Right?
Like this is outrageous. I'm like, wow, I mean, if only I knew reparation was going to be the uniting,
Of course, because it's
topic to
uniting
bring
against,
everyone.
exactly.
And that's what I mean when it's like it's that subconscious, the hatred. And I think that language is a very obvious one because language is very direct. But I mean, some people, I mean, like some people, they wouldn't go into a restaurant unless it was February, right? Or one of these pop-ups. Why is that? It's not really that hard to find a lot of black-owned businesses in this city. There's over 60,000 black people here. This guy is throwing an event easily. People will be like, I see people, oh, where's the black events at? I'm like, you use social media just like anybody else. Are you going out of your way to find these things? I go to Lamar Park every weekend. I spend money there every weekend. I eat. What I mean, it's not really that hard to support ourselves, each other. It's just, is it in you? Like, is it normal to you? And if it's not, then I think that speaks again to the subconscious nature of a lot of these people, which is anti-black.
I love that you said that. I have a friend that says I'm too black because
no such thing.
that's what I said. But she's telling me about Succession. She's like, "Oh, have you seen Succession?" I'm like, "There's no black people in Succession. I'm not watching that." Like for me, it's just not even a thought process. And then I'll go into restaurants and I am intentional. I'll look around. If I don't see any black servers, I'm not staying there. I don't watch movies where I'm not represented. I'm very intentional about how I move because in my mind, if we're not intentional about each other, no one else is going to be. So I'm intentional about us in every aspect of my being. And so to reference what Sanai was talking about, one of the conversations I had with somebody who was involved, with Black Restaurant Week, flat out said to me, one said I'm going to work with her because I have to. The other one said to me, I'm going to work with her because she repeated what another black woman said. These are black people that are saying this. So that's a whole nother level of like, okay, I'm not even wrestling with a white woman and her entitlement of using a word that she knows better. This woman is over 60 years old. She knows better than to use this word. I'm wrestling with black people who are operating from an oppressive mind state.
So the comment you made about the one person said they have to work with her, that's also problematic because none of us should feel like we have to work with the oppressor. To your point, right? Where are the black restaurants? Where are the black stores? Where are the black events? We all should be sharing that information amongst each other and supporting each other, circulating the dollar. So when someone does come up with a Black Restaurant Week, and then they do something that's disrespectful to the culture, to the community, no one feels like they have to continue to work with them. So we just got to come together and just do better as a people.
It sounds like the issue isn't the N-word.
It's not.
What's the issue?
The issue is us being moving as one. That's the issue.
Is that how you would summarize it too, Ari?
You know, it's something I was thinking about before coming here, but I think as an organizer, just it's important to be focusing on the issues and what are we doing again as a collective to solve them, and what are we doing, what programs are we putting in place, what type of opportunities are we putting in place for African and Black youth to be able to feel that they can do something. So we can talk all day about terminology, I can police you all day about saying the word, but what are you really doing for our people? I think actions speak louder than words. Of course, you can say to the point where people feel like they have to work for the oppressor, they have to work for somebody or what have you. That to me is a problem, that there's not enough support that you feel from the community is coming to where you don't have to, what's the word? You don't have to subject yourself to that type of behavior. You don't have to subject yourself to that type of work environment. You don't feel that you're valuable enough to be somewhere else where someone can treat you better. And I think that that's on behalf of the community as a whole. Like, what are we doing to step up? What are we putting in place for each other so we don't feel like we have to stay in these type of boundaries that I don't know who put these up, you know what I'm saying? Because it's really, again, up to you, up to the person. Like, what do you believe? Do you believe that you're valuable? And there's so much power in a word and in a name as well. I think a lot about Kwame Ture, who was very, very prominent in the Black Power movement, Pan-Africanist movement. And there was a speech that he gave about there's power in a name, from going from Negro to Black to African, right? And so, again, to go backwards and continue to call ourselves by a certain word also doesn't show the progressiveness as Black people that we went through. So I think that, to speak on the term, there's power in the name. So we should, again, be having accountability on using the more powerful names that we have worked so hard to gain or to get to. But in addition to that, there has to be action behind that every single day. So that way we feel empowered, so we don't even have to call ourselves that name or that word.
The issue is the helplessness that a lot of people feel within the community. I mean, Dr. Clyde Anderson, he talks about the fact that the Black community as a whole is moving towards being a permanent underclass. And so, when you look, and also I have to reference to my mother's family is from Tennessee. This is a very much a California conversation. I just want to say that, because you go to any other of these, I've lived in in Caribbean places in Brooklyn. I've been in DC. I've been in Maryland. I've been all over.
It's not a Denver conversation.
These are things that just don't. People recognize, like, okay, this is this ethnic enclave. I go to this area because I like whatever type of food or whatever type of culture. I come in. And I'm talking about these guests, right? Like this woman we're referencing. They recognize that I'm a guest. I go into the space. I leave the space. Here in the California, because post Tom Bradley era, Black life has been in the decline, and so that's where people can weaponize the fact that there's a void within our community, business wise, and create something like Black Restaurant Week. I mean, how can you be an ally when you're being paid for the fact you're being paid? I just want to say, you're being paid due to the lack of infrastructure, i.e., support from the powers that be with the Black hospitality space. Like, there are Black restaurants in Long Beach. They didn't just start to exist because of this woman. The reality is that certain business associations, the city of Long Beach as a whole, saw an opportunity, because we're in this moment of post-identity politics where people, like, let's reference everyone's rising boat. Everyone's in it together. So we have, Mexican Restaurant Week and AAPI Restaurant Week. Like, every culture has been divvied up because there's money to be made, right? And so, but the reality is, like, this, she's not helping no one. She's getting paid. But the only reason she's getting paid is because they don't want to do it with us. Like, I guarantee. I just want to say, there's a Long Beach Black Chamber of Commerce, right? The amount of black businesses that are in that Chamber of Commerce is appalling when you think about the fact that how many black businesses exist in the city that aren't a part of it, right? And so versus like in LA, they have GLAD, and that one is like it's like hundreds of black businesses, right? Because it's representational of the existence of the black community, black business community there. Like we don't have that here, and so people say, here's a money opportunity for me. Let me create this thing. It doesn't mean that like that's like some Christopher Columbus type like. I discovered the black restaurants.
Even though it was already here.
Exactly.
You didn't even think to go to any black-owned restaurant and say, "Do you want to do you want to lead this or spearhead it, or like what can you do?" Exactly.
Yeah, that to me. That's the real like any allies out there. You should give me the money, and then let me lead with the money. You shouldn't be leading with the money and then minstrel show, have me come on stage and do the whole pageantry show, and then
Look at my black friend.
and then you keep the money. No, that's not right. That's not right to me.
I like what you guys said about gatekeeping. I have this little funny anecdote that is 100% true, and I tell people this all the time. My family is very black. My dad is Creole, my mom is half Creole. So we're very black. We speak. Sometimes my dad, when he would speak, it would be that Gullah Geechee. I'm like, I have no idea what you just said, Dad. I'm gonna need you to slow that down. But very black, very pro-black, very building the community. And my mom used to always say to me, because there's a black vernacular that we have when we're amongst ourselves. And my mom used to say to me, okay, we have company coming over. And until I was about 12, I thought the word company meant white people. Because when she said that, it would basically mean, code switch. Like, that's what that meant. And then all this, and everybody would do it. So it wasn't like I was taught how to code switch. It was just, I knew when somebody said company was coming over, instead of, all this bass I got in my mind, oh my God, hi, how are you? It's good to see you, and it was just something that I was taught. While I think that's great because I think that has actually helped me as far as, especially in the business world, I also think it's a detriment because that's a lesson that I learned that, hey, as black as you are right now, that's not okay. It's not going to be viewed in a positive way, which is troubling to me now because not all those things that I was taught to kind of code switch from are monetized now. So I kind of wonder though, even as much as I don't like that concept, it was kind of cool to see that we knew that we were having a very black moment and that was ours to keep. So I guess you could kind of look at it in both ways. Was that us code switching, or is like, no, this is our moment. We're going to keep it. We're not sharing it. And I do think that, I look at the Kardashians sometimes and I'm like, they done appropriated every single thing black, and not anybody black has made money off of that, But how can we as a brain trust really help black people grow? And I know we're each doing it individually. Sinai was on the podcast a couple weeks ago. We talked in depth about what he's doing. I know what you're doing. I know what you're doing. But how can we do more to reach a broader group of black people?
Well, no, my thing has always been unity. Just always working together, not being afraid to spend money with each other, not be afraid to say, okay, you have something going on this week. I'm gonna come support that. I'm gonna do something next week. Let's not cross each other off like that, right? Let's work together because there's no reason to do this, right? So when you headbutt with each other, you get situations like this lady coming in creating a black, whatever it's called, restaurant week, yeah. And then now she feels like she can say the N-word, right? So we have to work together. We got to put our pride to the side and do what's best for the community, for the culture. So
it's not what you think.
I think the biggest issue within our community is the intergenerational gap. There are people that are older than us. They have all the keys. They have the access to capital. They have the access to space, and they have already the infrastructure. And they're not supporting us, right? The youth, and like. I just think that it's insane that I'm not gonna put no names out there. I'm being polite, but like there are cultural celebrations. Let's say, are they interacting with you?
No.
Okay.
Well, it's a long story.
But are you on the lineup?
No.
Okay, that's to me like that's a problem. Yeah. Like that's a problem. I go my great grandmother. She was she had an account at Broadway Federal, which was it's on King and Figueroa. That was in 1947. I have an account there, right? Like it's I wish, to his point, like it is that simple. Like, forget the outside community. Like I want to own a bar. I just want to say that I want to own a bar. There is a bar right now on Long Beach and Anaheim that was the last black-owned bar in Long Beach, and the black family that runs it, they no longer had it occupied, right? I just want to say, who followed next was a young Caucasian individual who was allowed the opportunity to reopen it as something else. And like, to me, it's like, hey, I'm here. I'm doing it. I've engaged with many different storefronts and successful businesses in the past and currently. Why can't you, older black person, hand the baton to me? I think that a lot of this anger that we have towards oppressor, dominant culture, whatever, it's factual, it's real, and it's the truth. That being said, oftentimes our elders are honestly, they're the overseer. Like they're acting like the overseer to keep us down to the point that by the time we get to their level, what have we learned? Oh, anybody younger coming after me, I need to replicate and do the same thing that was done to me. And I'm like, if you're a baby boomer and you're black and you're in a position of power, you need to be working in the capacity to give it to me. Whatever it is that you have, you should be giving it to me so that when it's my time to get to your point, I'll do the exact same thing. And forget everybody else and whatever other culture and ethnic group is doing. Like let's just minimize that gap, and we'll be most successful internally doing it ourselves with one another if the older and the younger people are in alignment with each other. That's my,
true. I mean, that's how legacies are born.
that's the real succession.
Yeah, that's the real Yep. Ari, what about you?
Man, I appreciate this conversation for sure. I feel like organization is one of the key things that we can really be doing as a people. I see a lot of us working individually. There's this organization, and there's that organization, and there's that business over there. And I'm not necessarily saying there's an issue with that, but if we're going to unify, what is the plan of action and how are we going to organize? Because I was vice president of Black Student Union in my community college, leadership development director at Cal State Long Beach and Black Student Union. So I've always been in spaces where I had to learn how to organize students and young people on campus and off campus. And so, one of the biggest things I'm seeing is there's not a lot of education based or rooted in organizing. What skills can you do to organize a people? There's a lot of folks that go outside and be like, all right, like I'm gonna go protest, I'm gonna go out in the street and do that. That's what here today, gone tomorrow. What are we continuously doing and how are we staying organized? That's why I believe that it's important. When I was in college and in Black Student Union, I had to figure out something to put outside of a community because I know that students are going to graduate. So thus came New Era Long Beach, you know what I mean? And so with that, it allowed me to find a space where I can sharpen my organizational skills so I can be able to go out and have the mindset with the community where I'm not just trying to come out here and tell y'all what to do. What can we collectively do and what plan of action can we put together so we can be on a similar accord and actually build? Like we're trying to build power, right? We know that there's a lack of that. And I feel like having the youth at the forefront of that is a big part of what can continue to propel us forward. I really appreciate what you said about, the intergenerational thing, because I've definitely seen that, over the course of the years, just being on campus. There's a lot of Black faculty that didn't support the Black students on campus because they have their own mindset going on. And it's like, well, the school thinks that we're all on the same accord because we're Black, right? But as the students, we are having issues because Miss whoever, you know what I mean, doesn't understand what Black students are going through because they're not the Black student, right? And so that definitely is a part of the solution as well, is like, how intergenerationally are we going to do that? But I think the youth has to step up too. And that really also goes with educating yourself on who you are as African and Black people as a youth. That's why I'm so inspired by the Black Power movement. I'm so inspired by certain people within that movement because it was a lot of young people, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 years old, choosing to understand what they can do to organize the people, right? And so the power is in the hands of the youth, and we are able to if we're able to organize, then we have a better plan of action to give to those that are older, so they have trust in us that we can actually do something with the power, because they think we're just young. It's like, y'all just young, y'all don't know what you're doing, but you have to have a plan and you have to be organized. So that's really what I believe can help us for sure.
I agree with that. And I think culturally, that's how we were. You know, our elders were very important to our communities, and they've passed things down, and we've just come so far from that. I think we need to hit the reset button, you know, in a lot of ways, because I've heard that exact same thing. You know, my dad was exact opposite. He's like, okay, you gonna take over this insurance business. I'm like, Dad, I'm not though. But but you know, that was definitely his goal. I was more of a creative, so that wasn't you know, along my lines, but that's how he was raised. He was like, you know, my family didn't have money, and then when they saw I was going to lie about my age to get into the military, everybody's going to support me, so then I can help support everybody else. I'm going to do this, so now you can take it over, you know. And we've gotten so far from that, and I think that this conversation has really kind of brought that back to the forefront of my mind, that we really do need each other. At the end of the day, we need each other. We need the older Black people, we need the younger Black people, we need everyone in between. Because the stronger we get, the better we can take care of our elders anyway as they get older, and vice versa. So I appreciate you guys so much for coming on here. This took a lot of turns that I didn't expect, but I knew it would, because first of all of y'all are dope in your own right, and I thank you for that, and I thank you for bringing all your experience. Thank you guys again so much for joining. This is our very first episode of The Conversation. It was absolutely fantastic. I appreciate you guys so much, and we will be having tough conversations throughout the year. Once again, I'm Jackie Ray. You can follow me on all things social media at Jackie Ray TV, or if you've got a topic you think is a hot topic that I should cover, you can email me at jackie@lbpost.com. And thank you for joining us on this first episode of The Conversation.